All right, everyone, blessings on this Mercury day. I'm joined here by your favorite, I guess, a guy who needs no introduction, but I think introductions are still in order for those of you who are new here and those of you who don't know us. So TLC here, Thea Custodio, your soul soil cosmic gardener and integrative astrologer. And with me is Tito Canto of Kanto Astrology. Tito Kanto, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm back. Previously I'm Tito Kanto from Kanto Astrology, but now I'm trying to explore a lot of different avenues in my life. So I would want to be called as Kris na lang for
Mm,
now, since I have already shifted from Kanto Astrology to Kanto Kronikels. Chronicles because for sure there's a lot of different things that I'll be sharing with you guys soon. And
mm,
this is a very timely this is very timely because me and Atite will be talking about the Jupiter-Saturn square and the changes since 2020 when it conjoined in the sign of Aquarius. So yan, Tito Canto or Chris. You can call me Chris or Tito Canto. Can't and anything.
anything. I love
Anything.
how this rebrand is so in sync with where you are in your life. And so I'm really excited to dive deep into this topic with you. So just short background. I invited Chris to just share a bit about this cycle, like this Jupiter Saturn conjunction. I think I reached out to him a couple of days before the exact opening square, just really listening to the call to invite him to actually invite his Saturn to speak more about the cycle. Chris and I have been exchanging a lot of astrology notes since 2020, and it has been such an honor, and it has been such an amazing it's really such an amazing honor for me to witness his journey from when he started sharing about astrology and where he is now in his path. So I am happy to actually emerge from our little cocoons as we were transforming and rebranding ourselves. So I think it's just beautifully apt for my Jupiter and his Saturn to come together and
Oh,
share about the cycle, where we have been in our life experiences thus far, and hopefully we'll get to, imprint some insights for your practical everyday life, nuggets that you can apply, like small nuggets of wisdom that you can apply. So just jumping right into it, Jupiter Saturn cycle. What is this all about, Chris? Do you want to share?
well, since the conjunction during 2020, Jupiter and Saturn conjoins every 20 years, right? That there. And this is the first time again after a long years that they will be conjoining in air signs in 2020. And this is the first Jupiter and Saturn square that's happening. I'm not sure, three times, right, Ate?
Mm-hmm.
Few days ago and then one before Christmas and then next year around July. And when we're talking about the Jupiter, a square, we're talking about friction, we're talking about crossroads, we're talking about decision making. And since it's the first square of Jupiter and Saturn, we may be asked to make decisions for the next 20 years. Well, most of those were triggered during the Jupiter and Saturn conjunction in 2020, the pandemic year. So if you have an idea of what you were doing at that time or where are your thoughts at that time, what were your dreams, what were your delusions, your curiosities at that time, this is one of the times that you will be shown like the avenues that you could take or you could go into.
Mm.
How about you, Ate? What's the Jupiter and Saturn square all about for you, or the relationship of Jupiter and Saturn?
I think I'd want to take, before I answer your question, thanks for passing the mic on to me. I kind of want to take a step back and have you explain what is Jupiter, what is Saturn, and what does it
Mm-hmm.
mean when they conjoin, and what does it mean
Mm-hmm.
now that we're talking about this opening square?
Mm-hmm. When we're talking about Jupiter, well, since Jupiter is the planet of optimism, like expansion, and then Saturn is all about limitation. And in a way, if Jupiter is optimism, well, Saturn could be the pessimist one, right? And them conjoining, every conjunction is like a new moon. Like when the sun and moon conjoins, it is a new moon. So that's last 2020, it was like a new moon for the Jupiter and Saturn cycles. And Jupiter and Saturn moves really slow. So their cycles takes like 20 years for them to conjoin again. And since 2020, it's about mid 2024 right now, towards the towards the first square, we can actually look at it as like the first quarter moon phase between the sun and the moon. And every time there's a square, there's crisis. And I don't know if I answered your question, or my thoughts are really all over the place at the moment.
Yeah, you answered
But
my question.
Jupiter and Saturn are quite the polarities when it comes to it's like your I don't know if it's mom or dad, lolo and lola, but two opposing forces. But again, uh I think both of them are teaching us something uh that is that is more related to our growth, since Jupiter is all about growth and Saturn is all about discipline, right? So in the next 20 years, since 2020, what are our thoughts or ideas about that next chapter in our lives? Yeah.
Salamat, salamat. Okay, so to answer your question, what is this opening square for me? But I'd also like to have a crack at what Jupiter and Saturn is, what it means for us. So you did say, so this is just building on what Kris said, Jupiter and Saturn are teacher planets because these are transgenerational planets. They move slow, like Jupiter 12 takes like 12 years to orbit the sun, while Saturn takes around 30 to 33 years to orbit the sun. So because they take long, they teach us something. They teach us a generational lesson. And when they come together, which they only come together, what, every 12, 30 years? How long do they like have every when do they come together? It eludes me now. But they only come together around 20 years, I think, 20 years. And when they do, they usher us into a new developmental journey or a new evolutionary journey, in terms of beliefs and in terms of our structure around those beliefs. Because Jupiter, like Chris said, rules beliefs, truths, religion, laws, while Saturn rules the structures, the foundations, sort of like lineage, yung mga haka-haka, like what we
Mhm.
learn from our elders. So when they come together, they teach us lessons. And since they came together in an air sign, which they haven't done in a long, long time, this has a lot to do. And they met in Aquarius at a very transformational period where we're being ushered into this new age of Aquarius. There's been a lot of talk what that age of Aquarius is, but also because Pluto right now is in that 0 degrees of Aquarius and is about to go back to Capricorn, which is a sign ruled by Saturn. Why that's significant is because it paints a bigger picture in our generational participation in this storyline that is evolving. And with these two meeting up in Aquarius, we are learning Aquarian qualities. So that's humanitarian efforts, the importance of our relationship with technology or our unrelationship with technology, our relationship with our tribe, our dreams, our hopes, our future, and our children. Yeah, Aquarius also rules the youth. So meeting together, like Chris said, that was like a new moon. That was in December of 2020. And when these two form an opening square, like Chris said, it's like the first quarter moon. We have what we call in traditional astrology, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's this crisis in action, because now we're being met with some sense of tension or frustration because we're being tested for those dreams and realities, the communities, the tribes, the Aquarian themes that we enrolled ourselves into in December 2020. And if you can just give us an idea, Kris, what was going down for you on December of 2020 when we had that grand conjunction, and what's coming down for you now that we're having this opening square?
All right. Well, since I'll be sharing my a bit of my chart. Okay, ate.
Mhm.
So since the conjunction hit my fourth house, I'm a Scorpio rising in traditional astrology. So it's my fourth house. Aquarius is my fourth house. And also that was also the time when I had my Saturn return. I had my Saturn return while Saturn during the conjunction, the great conjunction. Also my Venus was there. All right. Not to talk about my chart, but I can only speak about the themes in my fourth house at the time. You also mentioned ate about lineage.
Mm.
I think as I recall, it was 2020 when my late lolo, I've never met my lolo, my mom's dad, he appeared to me in my dreams, and that was the time wherein I got into astrology. I got into learning more about my lineage, my ancestors, to only find out that my lolo was an alchemist. He was an herbalist. Herbalist
Mm.
is herbalario, right? Ate,
Yeah.
di ba? And he did that all his life. And
Mm.
when I mentioned that to my
Wow.
mom, when I mentioned that to my mom, what she said was, "How did you know how he looks like?" Just like that. I was giving like accurate description of him at that time. And then of course my mom said, you need to pray, you need to pray, you need to go to the church. Maybe you're not going to the church, so your lolo is calling you. Don't come with him. Ganyan, ganyan. Like that. But that's also the time wherein I I delved into learning more about my roots, since the fourth house is all about our roots, our family, our lineages. And that is also the start of Kanto astrology. Actually, 2020 was the start of Kanto astrology.
Mm.
And it was more about not just about finding all the esoteric practices that my ancestors had at that time, but more on having this um learning how to be more comfortable, or like finding comfort everywhere I go.
Mm.
It's more of like finding home wherever I am.
Mm.
And since you mentioned the square, and Pluto has been there like since like last year. Oh, when did Pluto enter the Aquarius at first? I'm not so
Uh,
familiar, but since Pluto is also activating the 0 degrees
mhm.
where of the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn at that time. Also, I'll be announcing this at this moment. I'm not in the Philippines right now already. I that's how it is so literal. I'm lit at like few weeks ago. I'm still in the Philippines, and right now I'm looking at a different environment at the moment.
Mm.
And it's like what I mentioned to Ate Thea the other night, that I don't know why I'm here.
Mm.
And I
Mm.
guess that is Jupiter and Saturn.
Mm.
Jupiter and Saturn, uh, teaching me this next developmental phase in my life.
Mm.
Whereas last 2020, I was just so, comfortable being at home, being in the Philippines right now. And now I'm in a foreign place where I have to really start again, like set my roots again, like set another foundation in the next coming years. But
Mm.
the Jupiter and Saturn square right now is actually taking that decision to push through and to move forward. And I guess that's the direction that I might be living at in the future.
Mm.
But then I came to a point wherein I need to decide if I really wanted to go, because I can still, stay in the Philippines. But then I took a leap of faith. And that's all. That's I guess how I experienced this first square of Jupiter and Saturn, because
Mm,
it just triggered what I was thinking when everything, was so chaotic in
mm,
2020.
mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
How about you, Ate?
I was a bit scared that you were gonna ask me the same question. Um, but how about me? So when Jupiter and Saturn conjoined on December of 2020, that was when um so Aquarius is on my third house. So it's in my house of communication and short distance travel. Um, that was when I really decided to go all in and communicate about my astrology path. And I really truly pivoted from being full time in corporate. I call it from being a girl boss to being a girl moss. um,
Mm.
so it was really the pivotal moment for me. I think not just for me, but for everyone. For a lot of people, 2020 was a transformational year. But for me, what happened was I really started being more open, especially to my siblings, to my family, to my like my close proximity, third house. That this is what I'm gonna start doing with my life. Astrology. Speaking about astrology, teaching. I'm a Sagittarius rising, so I'm a Jupiterian ruled person. I've been very, very optimistic, and I've always been searching for a new version of truth, and I've always been exploring. But on that conjunction, it was more like, okay, enough searching. How might I now ground the truths that I've explored and discovered and teach it and share it in a more practical way? That was actually where that's what I've been deliberating on. And I've had these grand dreams and visions of, building a community, building a wellness center, all these grand dreams, like very Aquarian, like having a more humanitarian kinder world, living off the land, like very idealistic. Um, uh, my past life was also in technology, also very, very Aquarius. I was very um I had my knee deep in startups, in digital retail, retail technology, and the dark web. And I also have my Mars in Aquarius, so I have very strong Aquarius in my chart. And now that the square opened, that these opening square, and I have this crisis in action, I moved out of Manila, closer to like I also moved like a different zip code, but also a different kind of reality is dawning on me around I can't just be all optimism. I can't just be all dreamy and hopeful and eyes up at the sky. There's so much lessons around being rooted, being grounded, being embodied, being real. Like taking the time that it takes to build more solid foundations and really taking the time this time. Like I've been so used to because my role my past role was in innovation and in startups.
Oh.
I've always been used to like okay, pivot, fail, learn faster and then start again. But then this opening square, I'm like, no, but I don't want to start again. Like, I want to just finish what I started and just be in the long game and really build solid roots. So that's where I've been the last 4 years, give or take. Yeah. Do you have any insights? I'm kind of feeling that you have something to say with your
Yeah, yeah.
insights.
Well, I think like ate, when you mentioned like your Mars is there also, you're an Aquarian. I just realized, yeah, both of us have really Aquarius placements that will be triggered by the
Mhm,
next transits.
mhm,
Because specifically, if you have like planets in those in those signs, the planets that in there will be ruling certain houses in our charts, and
Mm-hmm.
it will be triggered, right? So since Ate Thea has her Mars in there, and which houses are ruled by Mars in your chart? Third and
So my
which
Aries,
houses? Like Aries, yeah, Aries and Scorpio.
my Scorpio
You're a
is where
Sag
my
rising, right?
Pluto is. Yes. So my Scorpio is
Mm,
in the 12th house, and
mm,
my Aries is in my fifth.
yeah. So both of those houses will also be triggered by the conjunction, like and likewise in my case, I have Venus and Saturn there, so I will be having like my Capricorn, Aquarius, Taurus, and Libra houses will be also triggered by that. And I will also want to add that what do you think about Jupiter and Gemini
Mm,
and it's like through the sign of Gemini, and likewise with Saturn midway
mm,
Aquarius.
mm.
How's
Um,
your experience about it
so
before we move on?
I have Chiron in Gemini. So Gemini is my descendant. So in traditional astrology, that's actually where we end, right? That's the house of the other. So that's where we end and where the other begins. And in traditional astrology, Jupiter is in exile in Gemini. So he's not a very comfortable Jupiter to begin with. But natally, I have Jupiter in Capricorn. So my Jupiter hasn't really been comfortable for someone who's Jupiter ruled, for a Sagittarian who has a lot of placements in Capricorn. So this theme and this lesson of being grounded, mastering my mystery, all these things have really been allowed. But for me, Jupiter in Gemini has this scattering energy about it because it's asking us to always have a beginner's mind and sort of explore points of views and not really sticking to one version of truth. And that can be unnerving. That can be unnerving to Saturn, to our Aquarius placements, and even with Pluto there, Saturn rules Aquarius too. Um, but then of course the modern ruler of Aquarius is Uranus. But there's this invitation to expand our capacity to hold a multiplicity of truths at the same time, which is also being helped by or assisted by Uranus being in Taurus, because Uranus is shaking up the fixity of Taurus. But to me, what really feels like Uranus being in Taurus is this evolution and revolution of embodiment, where yes, we're finding different truths and we're opening up to a multiplicity of possibilities at the same time, and it's shaking us up, like it's shaking up the roots, the ground from under us, so much that it's even seeking us to root deeper. And what I've also been sitting with since Jupiter entered Gemini is, how might we keep exploring our exiled parts, right? We always hear this, release the parts that don't deserve you, that don't serve you anymore. And I think we have this wounded relationship with releasing and cutting cords. Like it's something that I feel like an easier route to growth and evolution. Just cut cords, just burn down the bridges, just separate, just sever ties, and just exile. Parang ganon. And my exploration with Jupiter being an exile in Gemini is now, how might we actually integrate the exiled parts? How might we open up more to the parts that we exiled because we didn't want to accept? And Jupiter being there, being in exile, is kind of having us explore growth edges that we never really took the time to explore. And so the shadow side of that, I feel, can be kaya ang daming tao na can be depressed or can be anxious kasi ang daming iniisip. That's what's landing in my body. How about you? How are you feeling into this? Jupiter and
Well,
Gemini.
Jupiter and Gemini, I think I mentioned to you this to you the last time we called, but I always consider Jupiter and Gemini or Gemini in general, or Gemini is this like fun, communicative uh way of being curious, and Jupiter being there. And since it's the planet of growth, Jupiter in Gemini has been teaching me a lot about doing things like manually, since Gemini is also about doing things with our hands, right? Like doing things manually to explore, to be curious about things, how we um navigate our experiences in a non-mental way, since air signs are also about our intellect, right? But Jupiter in Gemini has been teaching me to be curious and to not mind about uh failing,
Mm.
or um how do I put it, to not mind about the things that could happen if you just try to explore and to be curious. But then, since you also mentioned I'm a Saturnian, I'm a Capricorn. Well, Saturn in Pisces, since I guess at the end of my Saturn return, I had my Saturn return in Aquarius, and as of now, I can look at Saturn in in Pisces as my delusions coming to life, like structuring my delusions, and how I can connect Jupiter in Gemini and Saturn in Pisces together is that structuring your delusions would require like manual effort, and like being okay to fail, and being okay to be continuously curious about building your delusions. I think that's one of the things that I've been pondering about with this Jupiter and Saturn square. Like, how do I make my delusions concrete?
Mm.
By being more by being more curious about the possible ways on how I can achieve it, without being fixed into an idea that this is how it can be concrete. This is how I can structure it.
Mm.
And just like I said, it's still midway through the science. I'm still observing, and that's also what Jupiter in Gemini is. How I look at Jupiter in Gemini. It's all about observing your curiosities, not just about doing things like Gemini can be a multitasker, right? And I think when you're building something, it is also inevitable that you are consistently building multiple things at once. Well, I've been since Ate was in tech, right? My background was I was in design and construction. And I think being in construction is like Saturn in Pisces, you're building like, say for example, a dream house.
Mm.
It's very
Mm.
Saturn in Pisces.
Mm.
And when it comes to Jupiter and Gemini, everything comes through your idea, your thoughts.
Mm.
And there could be a lot of different things that could happen while you're building a house, or while building that dream house. Yet at the end, you will just know for sure that there are different ways on how you can achieve, or how you can make your delusions concrete. And it is not like out of reach.
Mm.
Ayun, ate.
I just want to simmer in that. I think that's so beautiful to actually build your delusions, have structure around your delusions. I think that's such a beautiful way to put this and frame this square, like this mutable square. Pisces and Gemini are mutable signs, so there's so many possibilities. Just there's so many changes that's up in the air, and to just release your, I think that takes so much courage for someone who's Saturnian to just release your control of any outcome, to release your control, or to actually just release your expectation how your building of something will go. Because for someone who has a background in construction, you have to have a lot of um so we call it BCP in tech. like contingency, like business
Mm,
continuity protocols in place to make sure that everything goes according to the blueprint and goes according to the plan.
yeah.
But here we have Saturn and Pisces that's just dissolving everything and be like, hey, just be open to flow. And like everything can go in many different ways, and just trust that all rivers end up in the ocean. Like it's all gonna end up in one source anyway. So I think that's beautiful. So I want to sit on that and simmer in that. Um, in terms of how this can be applied, like what practical tips can you offer people? You were sharing a while ago such placements, where to look in their charts, what can be coming up for people. Maybe we'll start with from a general perspective. What does it mean for the normal Joe? Like what does this opening square mean for for the rest of us, and how can we actually actively participate in this transit?
Mm, okay. Sige. I'll give me like 5 seconds to think. Jupiter in Gemini is really giving me a lot of different ideas right
Go and grabe, Moon is about to conjoin Neptune, so
So I think, well, Jupiter in Gemini will actually give us a lot of different ideas to to. Okay, Jupiter in Gemini could make you super mental, but Saturn in Pisces would also give you the same thing, but that Saturn in Pisces would tell you how to structure your beliefs. And I guess for the average Joe, about how they can navigate through these transits is that, well, since Saturn in Pisces can also teach you about building your belief systems, what is true for you, it is not always a mental thing. Sometimes you just need to really feel it through your body, like to embody everything that is right for you, right? How you feel about it. And I always when I was still doing my consults, I always tell my consultees that we always, or most of us, have the tendency to overthink our feelings and overfeel our thoughts.
I like
And I
it.
guess that is some and I guess that is something that is uh still a lesson for me. And for the average Joe, Saturn in Pisces, you can actually build your beliefs. You can decondition from what was taught to you, just by being curious about how you can discover it your own. Jupiter in Gemini could give you all these ideas, the headache, the overthinking, but I guess it is still a good practice to balance like your mental gymnastics
Mm,
with your core beliefs.
mm, mm,
And sometimes, since we're in the square of Jupiter and Saturn, we might think that one should be prioritized over the other.
mm,
But since both of these planets are immutable signs, there's no such thing as like fixity. You really need to go with it, and most especially for mutable placements, right, Ate? Do you have mutable placements in your chart?
I'm a very mutable person.
You're a very mutable
I
person.
have a lot of I have a stellium in Sagittarius.
Mm-hmm.
I have my Chiron in Gemini.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's actually, yeah, that's it. My midheaven is 29 1 degree, 29 0 degree Libra,
Mm-hmm.
29 Virgo, 0 Libra, like that cusp. So yeah. And your point asking about
Well,
mutability
the
is
reason why, yeah, the reason why I ask you, Ate, is because I don't have any mutable placements aside from my nodes.
I feel that. I
And
feel
at
that.
this point, I'm really, not that I'm not feeling it, as much as you are feeling it. But since my placements are only the nodes, and the
Mm,
nodes are even, it's it's really hard to explain the nodes in our chart, right?
mm, mm,
It's not as direct as the other planets. So this is my question for you, Ate. For mutable signs, or who will be greatly affected by these
mm,
transits? Of course, all of us will be affected by this transit, but for the mutable signs, what are your uh, tips
mm, mm.
for them to navigate through all of these shifts and decision making that I don't know if a lot of mutable signs are used to?
Um, okay. What's coming to me is first off, because you shared overthinking the thoughts and overfeeling feelings. What came to
We're
me
feeling
when
the
you uh, can you share it again? What was it?
like overthinking your
Overthinking
feelings
feelings,
and overfeeling your
overfeeling your
thoughts.
thoughts. That's so
Yeah,
beautiful. So what came to me was, are you thinking about what you're feeling, or are you feeling your feelings? And as a mutable sign, with Saturn being there, I mean, with Saturn being in Pisces, and you said creating structure around our beliefs, all this mutability inviting us, and with the sun about to enter Virgo, all this mutability and this triggers and this the mutable cross is really inviting us to find that daily practice, that daily routine that can ground us to really, like I said, if we're feeling something, how can we take a step back and feel what we're feeling and not think it? Because with this square, I think that was so beautifully put. We can overthink our feelings, and feelings are meant to be felt. They're not meant to be thought. These are two different sensory perceptions that we are meant to process and go through. And for someone who has a lot of mutable placements in her chart and feeling this square ever so strongly, the tension, as I find working with squares, is the tension is finding, to being able to find an avenue to be creative about it. Because again, like we can overthink the feeling and be like, oh my gosh, this is just so limiting. This is so frustrating. This just nothing's going according to plan. It's not moving. And you're sometimes it can feel like you're butting your head to move a mountain instead of just finding a way around the mountain. And I feel like that's what this opening square can be for someone, for people with very strong Gemini, or even for people with very, very strong Virgo. It can be like overthinking and over planning to control the chaos, which is actually inviting us to unravel, because we're being opened up to different vistas that we can innovate from, creative outlets that we can innovate from, something that is beyond the known. We are in a lunar standstill, so the moon will be out of bounds more often than it is actually going to be in bounds. That's a different topic altogether, but what I'm trying to say is it's opening up everything. As everything is dissolving, structures, belief systems are dissolving and crumbling down, we are being asked to innovate and release from the tension of the old so that we can innovate and open up to something that we have never really known before. Because we literally are in a time where no one no one has ever been here before, right? North Node and Aries were all meant to actually trailblaze new creative pathways of being and living in the world. And if we were to come from our past, then we're just living our past in the present moment. And of course, this is someone with a lot of mutable can say, not comfortable from people with big signs to flow into, but that's an invitation. That's an invitation of the mutable energy, I feel. So how can people work with this, work with this cycle? And you did say that although the exact cycle, the exact transit happened on August 19, we
Mhm.
are in this until 2025. You mentioned dates, right? So they're gonna square again before Christmas. Merry
For
Christmas.
Christmas.
And then they're gonna square again. My note says it's on June 15 of 2025.
Mhm.
So we're in this for another 10, 11 months, 11 months, give or take. How can people work with this 11-month thing? And obviously, I'm saying 11 months, but
Mhm.
um, it's not compressed in that moment of time because we're still in a grander Jupiter-Saturn cycle that started on June 2020, December 2020. And we're just talking about the opening square here. So we're just in
Mhm.
the first quarter of a 20-year cycle. So yeah, like how might we work with this? How might we actually apply what we're talking about here to our day-to-day life?
All right. Um, I'll probably give this advice just like how well, because uh nowadays I just look at the moon phases, the placement of the
Same,
moon. And
same.
since Jupiter and Saturn, the cycles is just about it's a longer timeline, right? It's a 20-year cycle. And this has never happened for like 200 years, I
Mm,
guess, because it's in the air signs right now. And
mm,
all the squares, the oppositions of Saturn and Jupiter will be in the air signs.
mm.
Ay, tama ba? Hindi, mali. I
No.
mean, no, 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 no. Uh, I mean, the conjunction started with Jupiter and Saturn in the air signs.
Mhm,
And every conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter will be in air signs.
mhm,
So that's my point. And this is teaching us something about the air houses in our chart. And at the same time, how we communicate,
mm,
how we put out our ideas.
mm,
Because in Jupiter in Gemini, it's easy for us to, we are very prone to miscommunication in Jupiter in Gemini. And also the downside of Jupiter in Gemini could be like you could use your words to manipulate other people.
mm,
It's really like that. And Saturn in Pisces, the positive thing about Saturn in Pisces is that it will put you into pressure. It will push your buttons, but at the same time, it will test your characters on how you know yourself. What are your beliefs?
mm,
So with the square, I think if Saturn is pushing you for you to test if Saturn is testing your character, Jupiter in Gemini will teach you on how you can better communicate your beliefs to other people without pushing it to them.
mm,
Because with a lot of since Pluto will be moving in Aquarius, right, for 20 years also, there will be there will be a lot of communities that will be formed for sure.
mm,
And this doesn't mean that we it's more of like we have different communities for specific fields. We are like how do I put this? We can actually, in a way, there are several communities that will be making innovations about their specific fields. Say for example, oh, wait, my thoughts are all over the place. I was about to say the communities can actually give us an avenue on how we can explore ourselves, because in the next few years
mm,
Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto will
mhm.
be moving into a different signs all at the same time in a span of 18 months.
Ayan ka na
So when
naman dyan sa
Ate Thea
changes.
yeah, Yeah, when Ate Dea mentioned 11 months, it's like I'm I already forgot the countdown, but when you said, "Oh, what can we do about the 11 months?" I was thinking, "Oh, next year na pala yung start." Well, actually, this year yung start with Pluto permanently being in Aquarius. So,
Mm.
I guess sa hinaba-haba ng sinabi ko, my point here is that we can never really know what's going to happen because this
Mm.
has never happened before.
Mm.
And all we can do right now is one, to test our beliefs.
Mm.
Is it yours or was it taught to you or are you just following that belief all your life? At the same time, when Neptune will move into Aries, it will actually give you this urge to express yourself in a different way
Mm.
wherein your beliefs, like Neptune could also be about our beliefs. There could be a lot of different ideologies that will be present in the next 20 years.
Mm.
And Jupiter moving into Gemini is just like a preview of like how Uranus will move into Gemini as well. So I
Mm.
think there's a lot of uh uncertainties at this point.
Mm.
And I don't know if what what is the role of us astrologers in this upcoming events.
Mm.
But I guess even the seasoned astrologers are waiting for this moment because they themselves would be the authors
Mm.
of the cycles of what's going to happen in the cycles and in the future generations, like
Right.
hundreds or 100 years from now. So we can be like the polos, the valence of, of, of the modern times.
And
So
I think I want to extend that to everyone who's catching us here. We are the new ancestors, right? We are the ones who are here to create new storylines. Gemini is about storytelling. And so we are the new authors, and Saturn has a lot to do with authorship, authority. So we are literally creating his and her stories for the next generation to look into. So, how are we actually making meaningful impact as we re-author our lives? Like Kris said, I think that's so beautiful. Test your belief and really ask yourself, who owns this belief? Are these beliefs really mine? If not, how can I open myself up to new belief systems that are actually more in support of who I feel I can be, like who I'm really truly being called to be in this lifetime? And how can we actually move in more meaningful ways and, contribute in more meaningful ways to the generation that we are all responsible for creating? Um, so I think that's very beautiful. For the astrologers who are joining us, what would you say? Because you mentioned like the astrologers nowadays. I mean, for the astrologers in this generation, in this era, um, it's quite curious to be in this. How do I call this? In this life path, it seems like we know what we're talking about, but also at the same time, we're admitting that we can't really ever truly know. We can just have an idea because it's a language that we're deciphering. For the astrologers who's joining us, like, can you give specific placements? Like, what can they look into in their own charts? And then, like, how can they work with that? Because you were throwing around like houses because you were relating it with your house and my house, and then the science, the mutable house. Like, is there more, like, to give a more granular tip
all
for
right.
our astrologer friends and your students?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when I first look at charts, I always look at the red lines.
Same.
The red lines, the squares, the oppositions. Well, not because I'm a Saturnian, but more but more of like I look at red lines or the squares or the oppositions as points of awareness.
Mm,
which part of our chart or our house are we more, say for example, the um since it's a square between Jupiter and Saturn, it's in Pisces and Gemini. Well, we can look into our mutable houses, which are also with Sagittarius and Virgo. Sagittarius, Virgo, Gemini, and Pisces. So that's the first thing that I look, of course, especially if your angles or your ascendant, midheaven, and your IC will be hit by these planets, right? And that's the first thing I look at. And specifically, if there are conjunctions on those signs, um, what else can I share? If you have like specific planets in those mutable signs, it will also trigger the houses that the planets are ruling. Say, for example, well, I don't have like any mutable placements, right? But for example, Aditya has her sun in Sagittarius, right?
Mm-hmm.
And your East Sag rising,
Uh-huh.
right?
I have
So
Sun,
that's a one
Mercury,
each sun, like
Uranus. Sun, Mercury, Uranus,
Sun,
and
Mercury,
such.
Uranus. Yeah, and for say for example, Aditya, it has her sun in the first house. By the way, sun in the first house will always be the main character. That main character energy. And um the sun in Aditya's this Leo in Aditya's chart is in the ninth house, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have the ninth house in Leo. So these transits will trigger not just Aditya's sun in the first house, but also her ninth house. Her, well, a lot of different things that are happening to her in with regards to her spirituality, with her teachings, with her beliefs. And of course, it is always better to consult a friend or chat a friend with your chart so that it will be easy. We can easily look into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's one, looking at which houses are angular to to these transits, right? And also the conjunctions like that. And also your personal cycles is very important. Your progressions, of course, but those are topics that we can talk about in the future. But one thing that I can also add into it is that it just popped into my head right now about the Saturn in Pisces and Jupiter in Gemini. I'm looking at a different view right now. Like literally looking at a different view right now. Before we were recording me with Atitea and Karina and Nola, I was looking at, at a blank view. But now, and this is a different view.
Mm-hmm.
Will you allow me to show my view?
Yes, please.
Ate,
Yes, please.
alright. Oh, sige, sige. Wait lang, guys.
I think it's very Saturn. I think it's very Pisces moon.
It's a very Pisces moon.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'll just show you like a bit of my view, my bedroom. So, guys, that's a very different view.
Mm,
I still can't believe that I'm looking at this view every day.
mm.
And I'm not even sure if this is real. Sometimes I look at the sky and the clouds aren't moving. Please turn on the clouds. It isn't moving, yet this doesn't feel real. Yet it's very tangible. I can feel the warmth of the sun. I can hear the cars, the birds. Okay, I'll go back. And what I thought of just now is that Gemini is also our environment, right?
Mhm,
Our immediate environment. And Jupiter in Gemini is this feeling of exploring your environment.
mm,
And Saturn in Pisces can also be triggered by that because when you're out and about and when you're in a different environment, your beliefs can change.
Mm. Mm.
And with a square, it's like a trigger point, right? If you put yourself in a different environment, of course, your beliefs, your perspectives will be challenged. And it's an invitation for us to become aware of our own personal beliefs. And with that, if the blockage comes from your current environment, then maybe that is where you can start uh, building from, or that's the start of your, in a way, where you can make a decision. Like if you change your environment, maybe that can trigger a change in your beliefs as well.
Mm.
Or if you're interested to challenge your beliefs, maybe you can consider changing your environment and
Mm.
exploring more. Ayun
Mm.
natin.
Ang ganda. Mm. I think I just want to build on, because this is also something that I do. I literally changed my environment. um, if you're used to, because Aquarius also rules our tribes, right? And you were alluding to tribes and communities, that communities are going to keep mushrooming, but also our relationship with our communities are going to keep, will keep transforming as the decades rolls on. And we have Pluto and Aquarius for the next 20 years. Can you also experiment, right? Experiment around the beliefs that you expose yourself to. Because if we keep exposing ourselves to the same people with the same beliefs, then again, we're just, we keep reliving, we will keep reliving the past. And I think it's also so beautiful how you said, like, what is our attachment and our relationship with our beliefs? How might we actually loosen our grip, like Saturn in Pisces? How can we loosen that sense of ownership to our belief system so that we can actually create more space for the many nuances that beliefs can take form and shape? Like, and I think that's something that's very important for what's coming up in the world stage. A lot of people are fighting and are killing for their beliefs. And if it's Gemini, right, there's and Gemini again holds the both end. Where is this fighting coming from, and what are we needing to defend, and what is that attachment, what is that relationship to that belief that we are defending coming from? Is it a sense of fear? Is there a sense of like coupling of our worth and meaning and our sense of identity to that belief? So how can we start decoupling, right? I'm not saying sever ties, but or release, but again, like the to add into like the integrating of exile parts, how can we just open up and understand more instead of just judging from our current belief systems? um, Yeah, wow, so juicy. And I think we can keep talking about this forever, but are there last words, advice, insights that you can share before we close this first of what I hope will be many sessions?
Mm-hmm. Of course, ate. A few practical tips, I guess. You know, um, what's going inside my head right now is that we can be prone to escape at this point.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
It's very easy for us to escape just because there's a lot of pressure being put into our life right now. And sometimes when we think about escape, it's not a good thing, right? Or sometimes when we think about escape, it's like leaving something or someone behind
Mm.
for our own personal gain, right?
Mm.
But I guess, okay,
You're
I'm feeling a lot
filtering,
of,
parang may hugot.
actually, ate, I'm feeling a lot of feelings
Mm.
recently because I just recently moved here It's only been like less than 2 weeks since I've been here.
Mm.
And sometimes I feel like I left the country because I am so selfish about leaving everything behind. But I guess we've already talked about this like 2 3 years before, right? And then what 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 I remembered from that was you can pursue what you want without being without feeling bound by your responsibilities. Because at the end of the day, if you're really, you know, you cannot not attend to your own self, right? And not be bound by the idea that you're responsible for other people's lives as well. Well, I'm not saying this because like I left the Philippines because I'm escaping for something, but this feels more like a refuge
Mm.
for me. Like this feels more like finding my sanctuary.
Mm.
People who are listening to this, finding your sanctuary will teach you a lot of different things about your beliefs. And it might feel like you are escaping,
Mm.
but you can never really escape, in a way, your fortune from a
Mm.
traditional astrology mindset, right? I don't want to expound into that at it. But yeah, there are nights or there are days where I feel like I'm doing good here.
Mm.
The people I left, are they doing great? Something like that. So it's really hard for me to really be in the present moment because, but I guess this is also part of that, what you're feeling, what you're thinking,
Mm.
and everything can, uh be overwhelming.
Mm.
And just to end, my thoughts about this is that this, like I mentioned about escape, you moving into a different place or you making a decision, it's not an escape.
Mm.
The crisis point being brought by this square is an awareness that you are ready for your own growth, and it is only up to you. It is your decision if you will be held back by your past beliefs. And if you would choose to go forward and to pursue growth and to enter, well, just let yourself be surprised by the things that could happen if you just make a decision for yourself. Ayun, ate.
Amen.
I'm trying to not cry at the moment, ate. It's really overwhelming at this point. I don't
Mm.
want to uh overthink my feelings, but this is how I'm feeling right now.
Mm. No, it's really beautiful. So again, it's such an honor to witness this transit play out in you as an astrologer and to have a lived experience that can become embodied wisdom so that you can really share about this cycle because you went through it aware of what's happening above but also being present to how you're moving in the below, which is how I really hope um, astrology and astrologers and people who are learning astrology will be able to apply what's happening in the cosmic garden to here, because we can be aware, but it doesn't mean that it controls what we are here to do, right? I mean, this is what we've been talking about for the longest time. The awareness sometimes can give us fear, and the awareness can give us some sense of like preparation for what's to come. But when it's there, we don't really know how it's gonna land in our bodies, but there's a sense of trust and a sense of graceful surrender because it opens us up to what we least expect, and it's so beautiful. If we just let go of that control. So here's you and your Saturn being in Pisces and just letting go of the control and feeling your feelings.
Feeling your feelings finally.
So beautiful. So, Kris, where can they find you if they want more of you?
Well, you can visit me here at here's my address. Joke. Anyway, you can still follow me. Do not don't unfollow me because I'm still Kanto Astrology, Kanto Kronikels on Instagram, and that's about it. I'm not so sure if I can go back into teaching anytime soon, but as much as I would want to post more, I think that will be my priority at this moment since we're doing Kanto Chronicles right now. It feels like it's a better avenue for me to post or to share the chronicles of Kris
Mm,
here
mm,
in a different place
mm,
with all the transits happening around. So
mm,
I'll keep you guys posted about that.
mm.
How about you, Ate?
I
Any last
think
words? And
any last words? Um, just be. Just be. And just open. There's, I mean, we're only just talking about two planets here in a myriad of, and then there's just so many other things that's happening in the cosmos. And um, yeah, just really be. And I also I feel called to share that this compressed moment in time can feel confusing, can feel jarring, can feel very tense and heavy for people. May this be an invitation to trust that this confusion is there so that we can ask questions. And then the asking questions hopefully can lead us to the right questions. And so that we receive the answers that we are looking for. Um, and oftentimes trust that it's in the confusion and it's in the lostness that our true journey begins, if that makes sense. The path only reveals itself when we start admitting that we're lost. Like, I think this is a Joseph Campbell thing. The moment that we think that we found our path, that's actually when we've lost our path. So it's healthy to say that I don't know where I'm going because who the hell knows where we're going nowadays. And yeah, just be open and trust and come back to the breath as much as we can in in small pockets of our everyday, because these breathing, these spaces of breathing in the present moment just does heaps and wonders. And this is from someone who just has a lot of mutable placements in her chart, a lot of activations in the mutable placements. um yeah, I believe you have another thing with Soluna this weekend. Is that something that they can look forward to? Is that something
yeah,
you want to share?
I haven't talked to Gab yet, but we've been planning this for a very long time already. Um, Gab, if you're listening to this, I'm so sorry hindi na kita napuntahan sa inyo. The shift was really, really quick.
Uh-huh.
I hope I was able to go to your place before I left the Philippines. But then, I think Gab will tell you more about this upcoming talk that we'll be having
Mm. Well, I
from two
really hope,
Scorpio risings.
I
Yeah.
know. I really hope this is just the first of many transits that we're gonna talk about. From my Jupiter and your Saturn to everyone who's listening, I hope you're able to receive the insights and apply the practical tips that we shared here. Kris, it's been such a joy Thank you so much for making time and space to talk about astrology and the astrology of the time. Until next time.
It's always a yes for you, ate.
Thanks.
Always remember that. Bye-bye, everyone.
Ciao, guys.